Hi, my name is Jessica Dean. I'm the founder and director of Sober Living Inc. here in Wichita Falls, Texas. Thanks for tuning in today. Today we are going to get to know Jennifer. Jennifer is what we call a repeat offender. Jennifer has been with us off and on for about 2 years. She's come to us at some of the worst times in her life. She gets it for a little bit and then she gets a big head and goes back out. Today, we have Jennifer here. She's working in the office. She's volunteering. She's getting up every morning. She's getting here and she's working 40 hours a week. And she's doing that for free. She's doing it for service work and she's doing it because she doesn't want to die in her addiction. One of the last times that I took Jennifer in, she had called me. She'd call me drunk. She'd call me high. I'd hang the phone up. One of the last times that she came in, not this time, but the time before, she was being released from Montague County Jail. And she called me and asked me if she could come, and I told her no. I told her I wouldn't come get her, but if she could get a ride to my office, we would accept her. Jennifer walked in with nothing short of desperation in her eyes. She walked in and said, I have all my Social Security checks, I have all my food stamps, and I have everything from the last couple months that I've been in jail. Jessica, you can either give me a chance and let me come to Sober Living, or I'm going to get a hotel and I'm going to get high. So at that point, Jennifer got to come back. She got about 6 months clean, went back out, and came back over a month ago, looked and smelled like she'd been living in a cat litter box, and weighed about 70 pounds when she came in with her head down. It was kind of the flip of a coin to let her in or not. One of our guys, Ron, I looked at Ron, I said, Ron, should I let her back in? And he said yes, and that was literally the reason I let her back in. Jennifer is a work in progress, and we just pray that she gets it this time. I've worked a deal out with her that if she'll stay with this for 6 months and continue what she's doing, I will then give her 6 additional months in our program free of cost. And she'll be able to save her Social Security checks, and she'll be able to get her transportation and probably have her down payment for her apartment. Okay? And then do Kevin's.
Jennifer, how long have you been in sober living?
I've been in sober living since 2019, on and off, for different periods of times. This is probably my 4th or 5th stay.
Can you tell me about kind of what your family life was about?
Yes, my childhood was great. I had 2 parents, mom and dad. All of that was wonderful. I had a younger brother and sister. We moved a lot. We moved probably every 6 months to a year. My dad did different management jobs. We stayed home with my mom. Then my dad went into the oil field, and we started moving around Texas. And that was pretty much my childhood, just moving from town to town, packing up, going to different elementary schools, junior highs, and then that's when I landed in Archer City.
How long have you been using drugs and alcohol?
I started with Archer City because that is when I first started drinking. I was about 12 years old. I didn't know throughout my childhood that my parents drank. I never saw it or even knew that really drinking or anything like that existed. And one day I came home and saw my parents fighting in the front yard, and my mom was getting hurt, and I called 911, and the police came out, sheriff came out, and that was the night that, well actually earlier that day, during that, I messed up.
That's okay.
Okay. I started drinking with, I didn't know my parents drank or anything along those lines. I was about 12 years old, and one day my mom offered me a shot of whiskey, and she said that I might need it, and I drank a small bit of whiskey with my mom, and she had a glass, and she left. And when my dad got home, for some reason, I have no idea why, I guess the 2 glasses were still sitting out, and he poured himself a drink, and so he offered me one too. And later on that day, I found my parents fighting out in the front yard, called the police. They came out. My mom was removed from the home. The sheriff of Archer County was there with me. I offered him some whiskey. He said he was working. He couldn't drink. And that's when I started drinking. My mom was taken away. She went to the hospital. My brother and sister and I stayed with my dad. And I can't say that that was a bad thing. At that time, I was a straight A honor roll student. I never had any problems in school. But I did start drinking. I started drinking my dad's whiskey underneath the cabinet, and I started drinking his beer, and just did this when I came home from school. And I was drinking so much that my dad started realizing first he started marking the bottle, and then I started filling it with water, and he realized I was watering down his whiskey, and so that's kind of when my drinking really started, because my dad would call me from a payphone in town. We lived out in the country, ask me what kind of whiskey I wanted, and I would just ask people, you know, different kinds of names and stuff. So I'd say tequila, whiskey, the stuff you drink, whatever. And so he'd bring me a little bottle, and about that time I got real depressed, real suicidal. I wanted my parents back together. Tried to commit suicide. I was drinking. Police brought me home. I took about 90 pills and sliced my wrist up. And I wound up here in Red River Hospital, Wichita Falls. And I stayed for 45 days. And that's where I started to learn that there was other things such as drugs, which I didn't even know existed, because I was so sheltered in the beginning. I didn't even know that there were drugs or anything, even alcohol I didn't know was a drug. So I got out of Red River. My parents got back together for a few weeks or so, and things got bad again. And so that became, from about 12 to 17 years old, I went back and forth between my mom and dad. Here in Wichita, I started coming to Wichita to hang out, and myself and different friends, we would be dropped off at the mall on Friday, and we would all buy whiskey and beer, and we'd go to parties. I'd go to parties with guys 18 years and older, 15, 16. I was always able to bring the alcohol. I started buying marijuana about that time. I started smoking marijuana. I started selling marijuana. I was about 12 and 13 at that time. And when I'd get in really bad trouble with my dad, or I'd get caught doing something, I'd go stay with my mom. And she had moved in with one of the officers from Archer County, and their lives were totally different than the life with my dad and my brother and sister, because drugs weren't allowed, and I wasn't allowed to drink, and I'd go stay with them for a while, and it was all perfect and great, and then I'd get in trouble with them, and so I'd go back to my dad, and basically what happened was my dad decided to move to Eden, Texas, which was far away, and because I was a minor, I had to go live with him. He got remarried, and so I started going to high school in Eden, Texas. By that time, I was also anorexic bulimic. I weighed 78 pounds. I drank every day and smoked marijuana every day, and I continued that in Eden, Texas. And it finally came down to my dad and I getting in a real serious fight. I hadn't seen my mom in several years. I called her, and she came and got me. And by that time, she was a lieutenant sheriff for Tarrant County Sheriff's Office, and my dad was a deputy constable for Precinct 4 in Tarrant County. And the rule was, when And Mom has known all this time about my drinking and smoking, and I was always smoking cigarettes too. She told me on the way from Eden, Texas to Fort Worth, she said, you know, you can come live with us, but, and this is my senior year, the last semester of my senior year during Christmas, she said, you can come live with us, but if you break any kind of law, even to get a traffic ticket, you're out the door. And I thought, you know, goodness, you know, how am I going to do that? You know, this is going to be a altering experience. And I got with him, I got at their house, and they had a beautiful house, and everything's clean, and I started college. I was so proud of myself. They made me a deal. I could either go to school, go to college, or get a job, and they would get me a car. I decided to do both, so I was going to school full time. I was working graveyard shifts at a gas station full time, and everything was going really, really good. And then I had a new manager come in, and she was my fill-in on graveyard shifts, and so at nighttime I was bored, so I drove up there, and she was snorting cocaine, offered me some, and I had tried it years before, and I thought, why not? We needed to work in the cooler, and so I snorted me some cocaine, and that was the beginning of my Fort Worth drug use. Soon started dating the drug dealer, her drug dealer, and started selling cocaine. And it didn't take but a month or two before we got pulled over. I was barely 21, and I got charged with 28 grams of cocaine or less, which back in that days was a second-degree felony in Texas, 5 to 99. Of course, my parents were immediately put me on the streets. I made a few probations, or pre-trial probations. They did keep all my stuff and put down the money for my bond to get out. And then I started working. I started working at clubs, dancing, because I could make a lot more money and pay my probation that way, and I could also buy my cocaine. And danced, started dating managers at the clubs. I wasn't a very good dancer, and I couldn't hold my alcohol very well. I couldn't walk in heels either, so it was really rough, so it was better just to hang out with the management. And I went from clubs all over Euless and Arlington and Dallas, and danced my little heart out, embarrassed my parents quite a bit. Sometimes they would even take me to work. Lived out of hotels. And around about that time, I had moved in with that manager that had introduced me to cocaine. And I was over there one day, and this guy came in, and he said, I got some stuff that's really good. It's even better than that cocaine you're doing. And I said, well, heck, I'll try anything right now. And so he offered me a line of methamphetamines. I took one big snort of that stuff, and it didn't take 5 minutes for me to run down to the ATM and buy my first 16th. And within 2 or 3 months, I had holes in my nose, I had holes in my face, I had holes in my legs, was skinny again. It was awful. The stuff that I did, the hallucinations, had a little apartment, almost like pulled one of my eyeballs out thinking I had a splinter, just crazy stuff like that. My whole body just deteriorated quickly. And after that, I lived all over Fort Worth. I lived from trap house to trap house. I started shooting it up. That was a even quicker way to just do it. Never really smoked it. Shot it up all over Fort Worth. I was in and out of jails. Was still on the 28 grams of possession charge, so I was on the run by now. So now I got to where I was living with very old men. I thought I was really proud of myself. Like I was living with 25 years old and living with an ex-national president of the Banditos. I was real impressed by that. But at his house, you weren't allowed to shoot methamphetamines. You were only allowed to smoke it. And so that's when I started smoking methamphetamines. That's also about the time that Tarrant County Fugitive Squad kicked in our doors and found me after about 4 or 5 years on the run. Was taken to Tarrant County Jail where my mom worked. Total embarrassment to her. Being in jail at Tarrant County because of her position. I had to be put in single cell maximum security. I was never allowed in general population. I was always transported with 2 guards. Then I ended up, okay, go on. Okay, go on, right, stop. Okay, get on with it. Okay, and anyway, so, oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So what brought about the change? What made you decide that it was time for a change in your life, to do something different?
Well, I knew whenever I would be in jail for like 8 months, I would start reading Bibles. I would start reading books. I would start realizing how much I missed having kitty cats and human touch, telephones. The only access I had was out once a day. I started ordering every single Bible. I had about 8 Bibles. I would get really religious. And I knew there was a different life out there. And then my family, we tried several times when I would get out of jail to go live with different family members, but I would always go back to the drugs. So a couple, so I decided to move out in the country, back, get out of Fort Worth, and I moved to Parker County where I met my ex-husband, Terry, and we fell in love. He didn't use drugs. I ended up moving in with him. I got pregnant with my first child, Sherry Jean. We got married. Our relationship was very much in love. He loved me very much, and I cared so much for him. I did stop doing drinking. During the pregnancy, I tried to lay off most of the other stuff. She was born healthy. We did fight violently over any of my drug use. That was because I would go back to that, and he hated it when I used drugs and I had a baby in the house. So that was a major problem between us. And then I got pregnant again right after she was born, and I had my second son, Waylon. And after he was born, we separated. My mom passed away from cirrhosis of the liver at 55 years old, and I was left an inheritance. I left Terry and tried to take the 2 kids with me. I lived for about 2 years separated from him with the kids, mainly staying with him. We got our divorce. After the divorce, got back together, I got caught another charge, a possession charge, and got pregnant right after that, and ended up getting sentenced to 10 years TDC, served on straight probation. That is where it started changing, because I had weekly UAs, I had to have hair strand tests, I had a very strict parole where I lived on the outside. I only lasted about 3 months on that, 3 years, and then I went for 2 years to TDC. And in those 2 years, I sobered up. I started reading my Bibles, I started getting back, talking to my family. I had a little boy now that was like, by that time, about 2 or 3 years old. I'd call him from jail and he'd say, "Mama, when are you gonna be out of jail?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll get parole this year." no, maybe not. And so that's when I started talking to my family as a sober person. Started writing letters to my dad, writing letters to my aunts and uncles, all my family that I had left, and I wanted to do something different. When I did get paroled out, I moved in with my sister. That didn't last very long. And then I moved to Jacksboro, stayed with my aunt and uncle, had my youngest son there with us. And then I decided to come back to actually, I started dabbling in drugs again, and my aunt and uncle didn't want me there. My son and my daughter and all of them stayed with their dad. So my aunt and uncle were fed up with me, so they brought me to Faith Refuge in Wichita Falls. And I did 14 months there. I did the New Beginnings program. I learned about God, learned about being a lady, taking care of yourself. It was by choice, the program. I learned how to work. I learned how to talk to other women. I learned how to be a godly woman. And that was the main beginning of the change in my life.
So we'll just take a break for a second.
You okay? I'm shaking so.
So what changes have you seen in your life since being in sober living?
Okay, so when I first came to sober living, it happened, I went to jail. I was talking with some girls there, and they said, well, I was just there on a little charge, and I had left the refuge, and I'd been living in Wichita Falls, drinking every day, doing whatever I could to make myself feel different. And it was during COVID, the beginning of COVID, and they told me that there was this place called, which at the time it was Wichita Falls Sober Living, but now Sober Living. They said there's this place you can go to where you can live at this house, you can bond out, you can walk across the street, they can get you in a house, you'll live in the house, you'll have new rules, you'll go to church classes, you'll go to AAs, you'll go to NAs, and I'm like, wait a minute, you mean I can actually walk out of this jail and not have to go across the street or go to an ex-boyfriend, and they'll like take me in, like I could walk out of here and actually walk across the street, and they're right there. And they said yes. So at the time, I called the bond office and I said, hey, connect me to this program. And they three-wayed me to the Sober Living program. And they told me the rules and told me a little bit about themselves and what it was about. And for the first time in my life, in like 20 years, I thought, what? You know, I can actually walk out of jail and have a place to go, and it's a house, and they sound like nice people, and they've been where I've been at. It was too big of a miracle to believe, because I didn't want to leave jail. And I decided that day, hey, if y'all will take me in, I want to go. And I walked out of jail a few hours after that and walked across the street. And for the first time, when I walked through that red door, there were several people there. They welcomed me. They smiled at me. Here I am wearing the same clothes I wore when I went into jail 15 days before that. That very night, we went to celebrate recovery. And it was at that moment I knew I'd found the right place. I stayed with them for several months at that time. I was still having a problem with my going back to ex-boyfriends and people that still drank or used. And so that was usually the reason I left the program, because I could not follow the rules. I tried again out in Wichita a few more weeks, maybe a few months, in and out of jail on PIs, and I'd call them back up, and sometimes they would let me back, sometimes they would make me go to rehab first. If it was rehab, I would go to Serenity House or a 28-day program. That way I was clean and sober when I got there. And this last time was in November 2022. I was in Montague County Jail, and I knew, for some reason, I knew that that this was it. I was so over it. And I started walking in that little jail, and I started praying and walking and praying and writing letters and calling all my free calls and writing to Jessica Dean and writing to Brandy and writing to anybody up there, please let me come back, please, 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 because they had even suggested to me about a week or two before I went to jail to just leave I went to Serenity House and said, just leave there and come straight to Wichita, just stop right now and come back now before it goes any further. I didn't listen. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I was actually having fun or something. And so I came back in November, and this time something was a little bit different. I was given a position driving. I stayed busy driving. I went to my classes instead of going out and getting an outside job. I tried to stay within the office. I tried to stay within the people that lived in sober living with me. I went to the groups. I listened. I wasn't there complaining. I was grateful to be there. I was humble, and I was also very proud that I was given a position where I could help people get to work, go to jobs, go to interviews. I felt like I was somebody. I really felt like I was somebody, and there was something changing in my life. My kids were now talking to me. My ex-husband was talking to me. Everything was going really, really great. And what? And then I slipped. I slipped and had a drink, and I did get caught, and I was removed from the program. So I thought it was 2 weeks, it might have been 3 or 4, out on the streets here. Probably the worst time I've ever had in my entire life. The last night I slept out there on the streets. We call it dog patch. I called Brandy and I called Jessica every single day. Please come get me. Please come get me. Sometimes they talk to me, sometimes not. They say clean yourself up and get up here to the office. I couldn't seem to get myself cleaned up. And then the night that I could usually find a tent or couch or somewhere to sleep on. And the last night on the street, I slept on the street, on the sidewalk, and that day I had lost all control of any of my body functions due to alcoholism, and I was severely dehydrated. I had lost about 25, 30 pounds. I had shoes that had nails in them. And I woke up that morning and I said, I'm going to walk to the office. I'm going to walk to the office, and I'm going to beg to come back. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And even if they don't accept me back, maybe they'll call the police. Maybe I can go to jail. But I can't do this anymore. And I knew I couldn't do it. I walked and walked to the office. The office focuses about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. But the streets I was walking on aren't the streets that a female needs to be walking on, period, day or night, because it's known as some of the roughest streets in Wichita, which to me, by this time, I'm not scared of anything, but I did not look to the left, right. I looked straight ahead. I didn't try to do no shortcuts, do no back ways. I walked straightest way I could, went up to the office fully humiliated, embarrassed, smelled like a cat box, ashamed, and had to go in that office to Brandy and Jessica and beg them for help, any kind of help. What could they do? I couldn't leave. I didn't want to leave. I was willing to do whatever it took to be back in sober living, to be back in this program, and to do it right this time.
So if you could speak to your younger self, what would you say?
To my younger self, I would say, alcohol is a drug. You're beautiful, you're smart, you're intelligent. Stay in school, keep studying. Who cares if you're a nerd or if you have glasses? Keep studying. Focus on going to church with your mom. You know, don't be complaining about going to church. Don't enjoy those moments of vacation Bible school. I remember myself for Christmas, all I wanted was this big Bible with Jesus on it, and that's the little girl that I remember. And I would say, stick with that one. If somebody offers you drugs, quit that job, walk away. Don't even stay around that person. You know, if somebody does that, that's not a place you need to be. That's a bad place. Find another place to go. Just get away from that. I would say definitely don't pick friends that are using, and don't try something. I mean, if I knew by then, I was old enough that that's a drug and that's illegal. I was intelligent enough to know that. I didn't have any self-confidence. I should have had confidence and said, you don't need that to feel better. You're already perfect. God made you perfect. God created you. Keep studying. You don't need that stuff. Keep going the way you are. And follow what your parents' advice is. You know, stay in school. Go get that job as a 911 dispatcher. I should have listened to my mom. I should have listened to my mom a lot more and not tried to rebel, because they were guiding me in the right direction. And I was just rebelling against them.
What is one of the most important things you could say to someone else struggling in their addiction right now?
When you're struggling in your addiction, that means that while you might have access to it and you might have as much as you want or as little as you want, if you feel you're struggling, it's because it's because God and your spirit and your conscience, your beliefs, the way you were raised, you know you're in the wrong direction. And you know you're doing wrong, but sometimes some of this stuff, alcohol, methamphetamines, cocaine, whatever it is, you know that it's altering the way you feel. And the thing you also realize is what you're doing is only going to be momentary. So deep down behind it in your conscience, you know that this is a temporary euphoria, that it's going to end, and you know that you're going to need more of that to feel okay. And so that battle in between knowing, okay, well, what do I do then? Where do I go? How do I get help? How do I stop? Can I just stop? Where do I go to stop? Who do I talk to? What you do is you start praying. You start calling people. You start go to an AA meeting, go to an NA meeting, a Celebrate Recovery, call Sober Living. If you have anything like that in your town, make a phone call. There's always a phone number you can call anywhere you go. Call somebody, talk to them. Go to a hospital, even an emergency room. Ask them to give you some numbers. Every facility like that, and get those numbers and call those people. And if at all possible, go to some kind of meeting. I really recommend an AA meeting. You can walk into any AA meeting. They're everywhere. And tell them, hey, this is my problem. Can y'all help me? They will guide you in every direction with whatever town you're in. They will guide you to what's in their town, what's out of town. They understand. They don't look at you like you're nothing. They're not going to disrespect you. They're going to hug you, and they're going to talk to you, and you'll be given some choices and some direction.
We're back. We're sober living, and we're here so that, because first let's be clear that you're Jennifer Clark's daughter, and that you just want to tell your side of the story from your point of view and things that you have been through and experienced with your mom, and what you would like to see in the future?
Yes. So I'm the oldest child. I'm 19. I have memories of both the great stuff that my mom was good at when she was sober and the worst of the worst. For example, in the good side of things, when she was sober, she was always the first person to get any of us to the doctor if we were sick. She was always the first person we could go to if we were injured or had problems at school or anything like that. But on the other hand, when she was not sober, when she was on drugs or alcohol or whatever, you couldn't be around her. The first story that comes to mind whenever someone asks me what it was like living with my mom, the first story that comes to mind is I call it the crazy car ride. And what it was she said that she had a doctor's appointment in Wichita Falls. And it was the second to last day of school, and she said that she was going to be staying in a hotel. At the time, she had been sober for several months, so I was like, oh, she's going to the doctor, and I asked if I could go with her. Because frankly, we weren't going to be doing anything at school. And she said yes, so I went with her, and it wasn't a doctor's appointment, or at least it wasn't just a doctor's appointment. She was meeting up with a friend named Candy. She went to several parties. Was very intoxicated when she'd get back to the hotel. On her pills, all sorts of stuff. And I remember that car ride home was the worst experience I ever had with her. I remember so we're trying to get from Wichita Falls to Peaster, which isn't a long drive, but it ended up being that she took about a 2.5 hour drive and turned it into a 12-hour drive. It finally ended with me getting her to pull over at a gas station / Arby's in Bridgeport. And it was so bad that when I went in there, and I ended up getting myself something to eat at the Arby's, the employees there thought I was being kidnapped, and they called the police. And that's how she got put into a different rehab facility that did not work. And I got to walk away with one of the worst experiences of my life. But now, with her living in sober living, she's had her ups and downs, but I have hope for her to actually genuinely get better. I can see that she's working, she's staying sober, she's staying off drugs, she's staying off the street, she doesn't have to turn to any of her old quote-unquote friends, she doesn't have to rely on anybody else to help her. She's making a living for herself, and now she's helping other people. She's not the one having to take drug tests all the time. She's the one giving them. She's helping other people get out of the same cycle that I've seen her fall into over and over and over again. She's broken it, and I have hope that she'll break the cycle for others as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want us to switch spots, or?
Yeah.
I already have it on him.
Oh.
This camera on him. I was just going to switch sides, but I wanted to. What is your name? Wyatt Whitmore. Okay.
Whitmire.
Whitmire.
Yeah. Everybody gets my name.
Everyone says Whitmore, yeah.
Or Goofy
So is
Yeah.
Wyatt?
Wyatt Whitmire.
Okay.
Wyatt Francis Whitmire.
That's 2 W's.
Oh, I mean, it's Sherry Whitmire, Waylon Whitmire, Wyatt Whitmire.
I was born in 2011, November 22nd.
11/22/11.
Okay.
Mom wanted him to be born 11/11/11, but so many moms already. I didn't know you could schedule what time you want your kid to be born, but apparently you can.
So,
Yeah.
Wyatt, now you have the opportunity to share like your experiences and what you are like
Yeah.
for the future.
Yeah. Well, I'm the youngest child. Oh. If you want to do radio, that exercise. I'm sorry. But anyways, I'm the youngest child, and I see my mom just this, like, oh gosh, I cannot do this. Okay.
Relax.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of what to say, but I have nothing to say about it. I'm trying to think of something.
Just talk about when they had those sheriffs come over.
No, that's horrible.
That's a good example.
Well, I remember when you were in the car, I guess. But I don't know. I wasn't sure. I guess I'll not do it. I won't do it.
If you want to, you can just share like what you hope to happen, like what's your mind.
I
Yeah.
mean,
What you?
I kind of wanted to share a story, but yeah.
It's fine, share your story. It's your story.
Yeah. Alright, fine. I'm the youngest child, and I hope my mom gets better. Well, what she already is. She's helping out other people, and it's really, really cool to see my mom getting better, because I mainly have seen her through the worst, but I've seen her through some of my happy moments in life I shared with her. So, yeah. There's this one time, and I was in school. It was field day that day in first grade, and she didn't know it was field day that day. And we done everything. The school ended. It was like everybody was leaving, and then she still drove up because she thought she was late. And I cried, but now that I think about it, I'm glad that she still came, and it was a good moment with her. But now that I think about it, it is great. Like, I'm glad that my mom still came, and I'm glad that she's doing better now, and she's only gonna get better from here. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got.
That was excellent.
Thank you.
Proud of you. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Alright, sorry about that.
No, you're all right.